Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive into Erich Fromm's The Art of Loving.
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, it really is. And we're going to help you guys pull out all the important stuff without having to wade through the whole thing yourselves.
Right. We're going to tackle some pretty counterintuitive ideas about love today.
That's right. Like, did you know Fromm actually makes a connection between love and loneliness?
Yeah, he actually kind of turns our usual ideas about love upside down. He talks about these myths about love that a lot of us have, and he thinks these myths actually prevent us from finding real love.
Okay, so myths, like what? Give me an example.
Well, think about the idea that love is all about being loved. You know, that whole finding that one person who's going to complete you.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Fromm argues that actually sets us up for failure because it makes love into something passive.
So instead of looking for that perfect person,
You should be focusing on developing your own ability to love.
makes sense. So it's less about finding the right person and more about becoming the right person.
Exactly. Fromm says love is an active skill. It's something you cultivate and nurture, just like any other art form.
I like that. Love is an art form. So it's more about what you bring to the table, not what you take from it.
Exactly.
It's like you wouldn't expect to become a great chef just by eating, right? You have to learn the techniques, you have to practice, you got to hone those skills.
Precisely. And just like with any art, it requires dedication, patience, and a willingness to put in the work.
And I'm sure there are times when you totally mess up the recipe.
Of course, we all make mistakes. That's part of the learning process.
This is really interesting. So thinking about love as an art form, it takes the pressure off of finding that perfect person, right? Because it puts the focus back on us.
Exactly.
If we can learn how to love better, I mean, really love in a skillful way, then we're setting ourselves up for much healthier and more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another one of those myths Fromm talks about, the idea that love is all about finding the right person, that soulmate who's going to complete you.
Oh, the soulmate myth. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. I think we've all been there. You spend so much time searching for that perfect match, and it can be incredibly frustrating.
And Fromm says this search for the one is often driven by a fear of being alone.
Which is totally understandable.
Of course. But the problem is that it ignores the fact that love is a dynamic process. It's not a destination.
It's not like you find the right person and bam, you're done.
Right. You got to grow and evolve together.
And that growth only happens when you're both willing to put in the effort
Right.
to understand each other, to communicate, and deal with all those inevitable challenges that pop up.
Exactly.
Fromm is really turning these ideas on their heads. So we've got love as an art form, and we've got the soulmate myth. What's the third misconception about love he talks about?
The idea that that initial feeling of infatuation is the same thing as real lasting love.
Oh, we've all been there, right? You meet someone and it's fireworks, you're swept off your feet, but then as time goes by, that intensity fades and you're left wondering what happened.
Fromm doesn't deny the power of infatuation, but he warns us against mistaking it for true love. He sees it as more of a temporary state, kind of fueled by projection and idealization.
Like you think you found an oasis in the desert, but it's just a mirage.
Perfect analogy.
So how do we tell the difference between that kind of fleeting infatuation and something more real, something that's going to last?
Well, Fromm suggests that real love involves seeing the other person fully, accepting both their strengths and weaknesses. It's choosing to love them, even when the initial excitement fades.
So it's more about making a conscious choice to love someone rather than just getting swept up in emotions.
Exactly. It's about building a love that's based on respect, understanding, and a commitment to growing together. It's about recognizing that love is a journey, not a destination.
This is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about love.
And that's the power of Fromm's work. He challenges us to let go of those simplistic ideas and embrace a more nuanced, more fulfilling approach to love.
So if love is this active skill, this art that we're talking about, how do we actually cultivate it? Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and it's one that Fromm explores in depth. He talks about the importance of things like self-discipline, concentration, and overcoming narcissism. But I think we should probably save those for the next part of our deep dive. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. To be continued.
We'll be back.
All right, so let's jump back into Erich Fromm's The Art of Loving.
Okay, great.
You were about to tell me how to actually practice this art of loving.
Right.
We keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to hear the secret formula.
Well, remember how we were talking about those love myths, the ones that can actually prevent us from finding real love?
Yes, yes. The idea that love is about being loved, the soulmate myth,
Uh-huh.
and mistaking infatuation for the real deal.
Exactly.
We got to bust those myths.
So to break free from those myths, Fromm says we need to develop certain qualities, certain skills that allow us to love in a deeper, more authentic way.
Okay, I'm listening.
He talks about self-discipline, concentration, and overcoming narcissism as key ingredients.
Okay, those sound a little less, well, romantic than I was expecting.
Yeah, right.
Self-discipline, it doesn't exactly scream passionate love affair.
But think about it this way. Let's say you want to learn how to play the piano.
Okay.
You wouldn't just sit down and expect to magically play like Beethoven.
You're
You'd need to practice consistently, develop your technique, cultivate the discipline to keep going even when it gets tough.
So you're saying self-discipline and love, it's not about like denying yourself pleasure or following some strict set of rules.
No,
It's more about building that inner strength and focus you need to really engage in a meaningful way.
exactly. It's about making conscious choices that are aligned with your values, building healthy habits that support your well-being. From Rem believes that this kind of self-discipline, it actually creates the foundation for deeper, more fulfilling relationships.
Okay, I see what you mean. So things like setting boundaries, being present in our interactions, and maybe even like choosing to have those tough conversations instead of just sweeping things under the rug.
All of that, yes. It's about showing up for yourself and your partner, even when it's hard. And that leads us to concentration, which is another essential ingredient in this whole art of loving thing.
Concentration. How does that apply to love? It sounds a bit more like something you'd need for brain surgery or something.
Right. It seems a little strange at first, but think about it. Have you ever tried to have, a deep conversation with someone who's constantly checking their phone?
Ugh, yes, all the time. It's like talking to a wall.
Exactly. You're not really connecting, are you? Fromm believed that to truly love someone, you have to give them your undivided attention. It's about being fully present, noticing their feelings, really seeing them.
It's about being intentional with our time and energy, not just going through the motions.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got self-discipline, concentration. What about overcoming narcissism?
Ah, yes. This is a big one, and I think it's something that resonates with a lot of people today.
Yeah, for sure. If you're too focused on yourself, your needs, your ego, it's got to be tough to connect with another person, right?
Absolutely. It's like trying to dance when both partners are only focused on their own steps. It's not going to be very harmonious.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So how do we combat this narcissism? How do we shift that focus outwards?
Famatis talks about developing what he calls objectivity,
Okay.
which is the ability to kind of step outside of your own limited perspective and see the world through someone else's eyes.
So it's about recognizing that our way of seeing things isn't the only way,
Exactly.
and that other people have their own experiences, their own perspectives, even if they're different from ours.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond that me mentality and embracing more of an us perspective. It's realizing that we're all connected and that our actions have an impact on others.
Okay, so we've talked about self-discipline, which kind of creates that structure. Then we've got concentration, helping us to be present, and then overcoming narcissism helps us to expand our perspective.
It feels like these are all building blocks for something bigger,
You're on the right track.
something even more profound. What is it?
And that brings us to one of Fromm's most powerful and maybe even counterintuitive ideas, the act of giving.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Because we often think of love as something we receive, right?
Right.
Affection, attention, gifts.
Yeah.
But Fromm is saying it's actually about giving.
Exactly. He flips the script on how we usually think about love.
Okay.
He argues that the truest expression of love is actually in giving, not receiving.
I mean, he's not just talking about material things, right? Like giving gifts. It's more about giving our time, our energy, our understanding, our compassion. Basically giving ourselves, you got it. And here's the really interesting part. Fromm believes that when we give freely and genuinely, without expecting anything in return, we actually experience a much deeper sense of connection and fulfillment.
It's like that old saying, it is in giving that we receive. But Fromm takes it even further, doesn't he? He says that giving actually makes us stronger. How does that work? It sounds a bit paradoxical.
I know, right? It's a bit mind-bending, but think about it. When we extend ourselves beyond our own ego and needs, we tap into a source of power that's beyond just us.
So it's about realizing we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
And by contributing to the well-being of others, we actually enrich our own lives as well.
That's beautiful. Fromm believed that giving allows us to overcome that sense of separateness that we all feel and experience a deeper connection to humanity as a whole. And through that connection, we discover a strength and a capacity for love that we didn't even know we had.
This makes me think about all the different ways that we can give in our relationships. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture, an expensive gift. It can be something as simple as, like, really listening to a friend who's going through a hard time or offering to help a neighbor who needs it.
Exactly. Those everyday acts of kindness, compassion, understanding, that's what really nourishes our relationships and allows love to flourish.
This is also inspiring. It's like Fromm is giving us a practical roadmap for building deeper, more meaningful relationships in every area of our lives. But I do have a question. How do we balance this whole idea of giving with taking care of our own needs? How do we make sure we're not depleting ourselves in the process?
That's a great question, and it's one that Fromm addresses directly in the book. He emphasizes that giving isn't about sacrificing yourself or neglecting your own needs. It's about recognizing the abundance within us and sharing that with the world.
So it's about coming from a place of fullness rather than a place of lack.
Exactly. And it's about setting healthy boundaries, making sure you're taking care of yourself so you actually have the energy and resources to give to others.
We're talking about self-love again, aren't we?
We are.
Nurturing ourselves so that we can show up more fully in our relationships.
Self-love is essential. It's the foundation for all other forms of love.
This is all starting to come together for me. Self-discipline, concentration, overcoming narcissism, the importance of giving. These are all tools that we can use to cultivate the art of loving. But what about, like, different types of love? You know, the kind of love we feel for our family, our friends, our romantic partners. Does Fromm get into those specifically?
He does. He actually explores several different types of love, each with its own unique characteristics and challenges. I think we could spend a whole deep dive talking about those different forms of love, but for now, let's focus on one that I think is especially relevant to what you asked about,
Oh, great.
brother love.
Brotherly love. Tell me more.
Well, for Fromm, brotherly love is kind of like the most fundamental form of love. It's the love that connects us to all of humanity, regardless of our differences, our backgrounds, beliefs, experiences.
Sounds kind of like the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah, there's definitely a connection there. Brotherly love is about treating others with the same care, respect, and compassion that we want for ourselves. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and helping those in need.
Especially in today's world, with so much division and conflict. This kind of love feels really important. It's a reminder that we're all in this together despite our differences.
Exactly. And Fromm believed that brotherly love is the foundation for a more just and peaceful society.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, he saw it as the antidote to things like prejudice, hatred, and violence, a powerful force for social change.
So it's not just some abstract ideal, it's something that can actually make a real difference in the world.
Absolutely. It's about taking action, standing up for what's right, and treating everyone with respect and dignity.
Which isn't always easy.
No, it's not. It takes courage, compassion, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
This makes me realize that practicing this art of loving, it's not just about our personal relationships.
No, it's not.
It's about spreading that love outward to our communities and to the world. That's a big concept.
It is, and it's a concept that Fromm felt was essential for the survival and flourishing of humanity. He saw love as the answer to a lot of the challenges we face as a society.
It's almost like he's saying that love isn't just a feeling, it's a way of being in the world, a choice we make every day.
It's a beautiful way to put it, and it's a choice that can transform not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us.
I'm feeling inspired. This deep dive into the art of loving is seriously opening my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about love.
I'm so glad to hear that. I think we still have time to cover one more type of love that Fromm talks about.
Okay, that's perfect. Let's talk about that. I'm ready to learn how to become my own biggest fan.
Well, Fromm's view of self-love is a little different from the treat yourself kind of mentality that's popular today. He's not talking about indulging in selfish desires or putting yourself above others.
Okay, so then what is he talking about? What does healthy self-love look like?
For Fromm, self-love is about recognizing your inherent worth and value as a human being. It's about treating yourself with the same care, respect, and compassion that you would offer to anyone else you love.
I think so many people struggle with that. They're so quick to criticize themselves, focus on their flaws.
Yeah.
Especially when we're constantly bombarded with these messages about how we should look, what we should be doing.
Absolutely. We live in a culture that often encourages comparison and self-doubt, but Fromm really believed that self-love is crucial for our well-being, both emotionally and psychologically.
That makes sense.
It's the foundation upon which all other forms of love are built.
Because if you don't love and respect yourself, how can you give and receive love from others?
Right.
It's like trying to fill up someone else's cup when your own is empty.
Exactly. And that's why Fromm emphasizes the importance of taking care of ourselves,
Okay.
both physically and emotionally, making choices that support our well-being, doing things we enjoy, surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up.
So it sounds like self-love is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's not just a destination. It's about constantly showing up for yourself and making those choices that reflect your self-worth.
You got it. And it's not always easy. It takes courage to challenge those negative thoughts and to embrace all parts of yourself, even the not so great ones.
It's so worth it though, right?
Yeah.
When you cultivate that sense of self-love, you're so much more equipped to navigate the ups and downs of life. And you're able to build those strong, fulfilling relationships with others.
Absolutely. Self-love is a gift. It's a gift you give to yourself and to the world. It allows you to show up more fully, give more freely, and just experience love in all its richness and complexity.
Wow. I think we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We've talked about those common myths about love,
Yeah.
the key things we can do to cultivate the art of loving.
hmm
And we've even touched on the ideas of brotherly love and self-love. What are some of your main takeaways from all of this?
Well, one of the biggest things that stands out to me is that Fromm sees love as something we actively choose, something we work towards. It's a way of being in the world.
It's not something that just magically happens.
No, it's not a fairy tale.
Real love requires effort and commitment,
It does, and it can be messy and challenging,
but also so rewarding.
incredibly rewarding and transformative. It's a journey worth taking. And speaking of journeys, I think it's about time we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But we'll be back for part 3, where we'll explore even more of Fromm's amazing insights on love and what it means to live a truly loving life.
I'm so ready for part 3. This is getting good.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive on the art of loving. We've covered so much ground already, but I'm eager to keep exploring. What other insights does Fromm have for us?
Well, we've talked about love as an active practice. We debunked those common myths about love, and we even touched on the importance of things like self-discipline and overcoming narcissism. But there's one more piece to this puzzle I think we need to explore.
Ooh, I love a good puzzle. Lay it on me.
It's the role of faith.
Faith. I don't usually associate faith with love.
I know what you mean. But when Fromm talks about faith, he means something a little different than the traditional religious definition.
Okay, so what does he mean?
For Fromm, faith is less about believing in a specific set of rules or doctrines and more about having this deep trust in life, in yourself, and in the power of love itself.
Interesting. So tell me more about this Fermian faith. How does that work?
Fromm believed that real love requires a leap of faith.
Okay.
It's about trusting that even when things are tough, love will always win out in the end.
So even when we face challenges or we're uncertain about the future, we have to trust in the power of love.
Exactly. It's about being vulnerable, opening your heart to others, and believing that you're worthy of love.
He sounds like a pretty optimistic guy.
He was, and that optimism wasn't naive. It came from a deep understanding of what it means to be human. Fromm believed that love is the strongest force in the universe. It can heal wounds, bring people together, and create a more just and compassionate world.
I love that idea. It's so hopeful. But honestly, it also feels a little daunting. How do we cultivate that kind of faith in a world that often feels pretty dark and hopeless?
That's a really good question. Fromm acknowledges that it's not always easy. He says that building faith takes courage, it takes self-awareness, and a willingness to face our fears.
Not a walk in the park.
No, it's not. You have to realize that love is not always easy. It takes effort, it takes commitment, and there are times when you're going to feel discouraged or full of doubt.
So it's about accepting those ups and downs and choosing to believe in love even when it's tough.
Exactly. And surrounding yourself with people who support you, who inspire you, and who remind you of how powerful love can be. Find those sources of hope and let them fuel your faith.
This makes me think about people who have fought for social justice, like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mother Teresa. It must have taken so much faith to stand up against those injustices, to believe that change was possible.
Absolutely. Those are perfect examples of the kind of faith Fromm is talking about. They didn't let fear stop them. They believed in the power of love to change the world, and they acted on that belief. And guess what? Their faith was contagious. It inspired others to join them.
It's like that ripple effect when you throw a stone in a pond.
Right.
That one act can create waves that spread out much farther.
Exactly. And that's what's so amazing about faith. It's not passive. It pushes us to act, to create, to make a difference.
This has been such an incredible journey. We've talked about myths, about love, the power of giving, the importance of self-love, and now faith. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on what it means to love.
From's The Art of Loving really challenges us to think differently about love, doesn't it?
It does. It's made me realize that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every single day.
It's a way of being in the world.
It's a commitment. And the more we work on it, the more we cultivate our capacity to love, the richer and more meaningful our lives become. What do you think?
I totally agree. It's easy to fall into those fairy tale ideas about love, but Fromm reminds us that it takes work. Real love can be messy and challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up our deep dive into the art of loving.
I agree.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
We've talked about so many different kinds of love. Romantic love, self-love, brotherly love. But what about the love we have for the things that make us feel alive?
You mean like our passions, our work, our purpose?
Exactly. How does Fromm's philosophy apply to those areas of our lives?
That's a great question. Maybe we'll have to do another deep dive to really explore that. But for now, think about this. Fromm believed that love isn't just about our relationships with other people, it's about our relationship with life itself.
Wow.
It's about finding meaning in what we do, expressing our creativity, and making a contribution to the world that feels true to who we are.
So as we go about our day, we should think about the things that bring us joy, the things that light us up, and ask ourselves how we can bring more love into those areas of our lives.
Absolutely. How can we express that love through our work, through our passions, through the way we interact with the world around us?
And remember, the more love we give, the more we have to give.
Exactly. Go out there and spread the love.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the art of loving. Keep loving fiercely, and we'll see you next time.